Time is now 5 p.m. Whoa, look at that sound tonight. Time is now 5 p.m. on Tuesday, October 8th. I'm calling to order the executive meeting of the Warwick School Committee. At this time, I'd be looking for a vote to go into closed session for discussion and or action regarding those items of business exempt from open meetings under general laws of Rhode Island, RIGL 42-46-5, A1, A2, A4, A8, A9. Motion made by Ms. Hazelwood.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Testa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're now in exec. Good evening. Time is now 5:31. I'm calling to order the Tuesday, October 8th, 2024 meeting of the Warwick School Committee. At this time, I ask everyone willing and able to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. One item we did not do in when we first kicked off this evening, it's a fault of my own, was recognition. So I turn it over to Ms. Ruggieri to spotlight this month's employee spotlight.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I welcome everybody back to the 24-25 school year, and this brings us back to one of our favorite events, as I say every month, where we get to honor those that are out in the buildings and doing great things. So without further ado, I'd first like to honor Karen Kinder as our secretary at Greenwood Elementary School, Carla Justiniano, our social worker at Norwood Elementary School, Nicole Bertrand, special educator at Welk, Brad Martin, assistant principal of climate and culture at Tollgate, Laura Williamson, teacher assistant at Veterans Middle School, Bill Millette, teacher at Pilgrim, Ray Vicalis, custodian at Lippet, and Amy Panero, our ELA coordinator in administration. So again, please keep the nominations coming. We look forward to this every month. The email went out tonight, so the new form is in there, and we look forward to honoring more. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ruggieri, and congratulations to all those that were recognized for the month of September. At this time, I'd be looking for a vote to return to open session.
So moved.
Made by Ms. Hazelwood.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Backus. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Be looking for a motion to seal the minutes of executive session.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Hazelwood. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes 5-0. There were no votes taken in executive session. We're now on to the public comment portion of our meeting. Individual comments will be respectfully limited to 3 minutes per person, with public comments not to exceed 45 minutes. Though the content of comments will not be restricted, it is the hope of this committee that citizens, committee members, and the administration alike will be respectful of each other's right to speak, tolerant of different points of view, and mindful of everyone's time. This public comment period is for agenda items only. A second public comment session is available later in the meeting for all other topics or concerns. Members of the public are permitted to speak during both public comment periods. Speakers are asked to state their name for the record. If you're new to our meeting and you have a comment that you'd like to make, please feel free to make your way down to the podium.
How's that? Good evening, all. I just have, it looks like I'm flying solo, oh, maybe not. I just wanted to say thank you. I saw the item on the agenda, item number 34. I just want to urge all of you to understand that while you all took the budget into consideration, I'm grateful to see those IASC programs at Cedar Hill and Oakland Beach and Park School having one of the positions restored. Our numbers are up high. Our teacher assistants and teachers and administrators in our schools, especially, I know it's all over, it's high schools and middle schools, but our elementary students are still so young. They just need so much hands-on. So anyway, I just wanted to say I was happy to see it on the agenda, and obviously you've always supported our students, so I'm urging you to approve. Thank you.
Hi, Darlene Netco, lifelong resident of Warwick, homeowner, taxpayer, voter, graduate of Warwick Public Schools, teacher at Tollgate, president of the Warwick Teachers Union. Ditto to what Mary said about restoring positions, adding positions whenever necessary. We could use more special ed positions and more special ed teacher assistant positions in the elementary schools at this point, to ease the transition into a new methodology of scheduling students. Also, an item on the agenda is the new high schools. So as always, I and many other people are looking forward to see what new information we have. At a toll gate, we would like to know when the demolition of Drum Rock is scheduled to begin. We are currently parking below the Career Center and walking up a very long staircase, which is going to become more arduous as the snow falls. So we would like to know that our new parking arrangement is not in vain. And it would be nice to know when the asbestos abatement and demolition of Drum Rock is going to begin. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public wishing to comment? Any other members of the public wishing to comment? Any other members of the public wishing to comment? I think you did that purposely. Go ahead.
Sean Rainey, I don't know if this is the right time. I want to speak on the lights for vets. I think that's on the agenda for tonight. Hopefully it'll get passed by you people. Also, I hope you will go back to the mayor and tell him you want the money that they put aside for the track at the budget hearings. They put in $500,000. They spent whatever they spent on the track. That extra money should come back and help towards those lights. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public wishing to comment? Any other members of the public wishing to comment? Any other members of the public wishing to comment? Seeing none, we will now move on to recommended actions. First, routine matters. I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes of public session on September 11th, 2024. So moved. Made by Ms. Backus.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Testa and Ms. Hazelwood. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes 5-0. I'm looking for a motion of approval of minutes of executive session on September 11th, 2024, made by Ms. Backus. Seconded by Mr. Testa and Ms. Hazelwood. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. I'm looking for a motion of approval of transfers October 8th, 2024,
So moved.
made by Ms. Hazelwood. Seconded by Ms. Backus and Mr. Testa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. I'm looking for a motion of approval of warrants for October 8th, 2024, made by Ms. Backus.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Hazelwood and Mr. Testa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. At this time, I turn it over to Ms. Ruggieri for announcements, personnel as presented.
Hello again. I have a few items requiring a vote tonight. First, we have one retirement in the Wise Union. Joanne Spermuli at Cedar Hill Elementary School will be retiring in December. She's been with us for 15 years.
Thank you, Mr. Ruggieri. Congratulations on the retirement. I'm looking for us to make a motion to accept her retirement. Motion made by Mr. Testa, seconded by Ms. Backus. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. I have three resignations also requiring a vote. Michael Derniak, Assistant Controller in the Accounting Department, effective September 13th. Al Speaks, Assistant Principal of Climate and Culture at Windman Middle School, effective September 11th. And Lori Drown, Part-Time Central Registration Clerk, effective October 4th.
Thank you. Looking for a motion to approve the appointments and assignments as presented.
Move approval.
Motion made by Ms. Backus,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Hazelwood. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. One more requiring a vote. A parental leave for Rosa Lancelata, world language teacher at Tollgate High School. You had approved one for first semester, and she's now requesting the second semester.
Thank you. Looking for a motion to move approval made by Ms. Backus,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Hazelwood. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, and I have two courtesy announcements. We welcome a new Assistant Controller and Finance Bond Manager, Carlisle Vincent. She started with us on October 7th in the Finance Department. And we welcome Kurt Ricks as the SEL Grant Administrative Support Specialist, who will be starting with us on October 21st, also in administration. So we welcome them both to the district.
Thank you, Mr. Jerry, and we welcome those new individuals to the district. Lose a microphone here. We're now on to donations and correspondence. First, we'd like to thank the First Unitarian Church of Providence. They provided 75 pairs of socks totaling $525, which will benefit the students here in the city of Warwick. And I would also like to thank Lori Witham from Proclamation Ale Company for providing school supplies valued at $150 to Scott Elementary School. So thank you to both Lori Witham and the First Unitarian Church of Providence for their very kind and generous donations to our students. At this time, we're on to adoption of policies. First read, Ms. Murray, first policy up, IGDB, student publications.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you. All right. Tonight we have IGDB, student publications. We reviewed that in our committee, and we've added some language around our rationale around student publications and the need for it. We've also added 4 specific areas in which there would be a reason that the Warwick Public Schools district administration may disapprove part or all of the school-sponsored publications, and that would be libelous or slanderous, constitutes an unwarranted invasion of privacy, violates federal law or state law, and incites a clear or present danger around a few things like violation of school district policy, an unlawful act, and a substantial disruption to the operation.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Looking for a motion to move approval on policy IGDB, student publications.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa, seconded by Ms. Hazelwood. Any discussion? I would just comment, great job by you and the policy subcommittee and Ms. Hazelwood and Ms. Kirby Chapman. I know that policy is a very difficult policy to kind of work with because you have to kind of conform to the ACLU's freedom of speech and freedom of press kind of obligations there. So nicely done to all of you, and probably still will be challenged somewhere by somebody, but you know, great job.
Thank you.
Any other comments or discussions on this policy? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Looking for motion to move approval on policy ACA, final rule, Title IX policy and grievance procedure.
I think
Do we let her comment after the
let-
move approval? Because we have to have it come before us to be able to speak, right? That's what I
we
should've
didn't do
done
that
on
in
the last one.
Yeah, it's fine. I'll move it.
Motion made by Mr. Testa,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Hazelwood. Ms. Murray. That's what I should have done on the last one. Apologies.
I know, I was a little confused by that. All right, so this new Title IX final rule is it's a new addition to the Title IX policy. It strengthens and protects against sex discrimination in schools, ensures that schools are safe and welcoming to all of our students. It also protects from sex-based discrimination and harassment on things like pregnancy, sexual orientation and gender identity, and then gives a very clear outline of the procedures and grievance procedure for schools to follow as well.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Murray. Any comments or questions from members of the committee? The only comment that I would make on this, just for the public's knowledge, this will go back to the policy subcommittee in preparation for its second read, but just for everyone's knowledge, Attorney Hennius did share with myself and the chair of the policy subcommittee the other day, and we'll certainly get it out to all of the members of the committee in preparation for the next meeting, that there were a couple injunctions that were filed based on a Kansas ruling. So there's some impact to some of our schools relative to this policy. So this policy is going to have to take into account that injunction and kind of how we'll navigate and apply it to certain schools. So that's my only comment on this. Anyone else? Any other comments? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next, I'd be looking for a motion to move approval on policy DIC, financial reports and statements.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Hazelwood. Ms. Murray.
So this policy was revised in March of last year, and it came before us again as another review. And in here, we have just stricken the first sentence because this no longer applies to our procedures of creating a fiscal report. It now aligns better with what we normally do. We update the city along the way.
Great. Thank you. Any comments or questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Murray. We're now on to new business. First item, discussion update, superintendent update. Superintendent Danbrook.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the school committee. First up is I want to talk about a new initiative that Aramark Foods is starting this year. So they're rolling out what they call a share bin program at some elementary schools. And this is an excellent way for child nutrition programs to reduce food waste and provide food for hungry kids. So when you purchase a lunch in the schools, you have to take something from every category, whether you want it or not. So at the end, the kids are dumping away the things that they don't want in the basket. So in order to reduce that waste, Aramark came up with a share bin. So if you go through the line and you didn't want the milk, you can put the milk in the share bin, and then someone else later can come up and take that milk if they want it. So of course, everything in there is unopened. The lunch aides have been trained. So we're starting it in some schools. Not all schools are up and running with this program. The schools that go in the share bin are all our food, nothing from home. So we know about allergies, and again, some of the nurses are on board with it and helping the lunch aides with that. The next thing I want to talk about is Save the Bay. It's one of my favorite programs. We've had it, for over 15 years. And all of the elementary schools will be participating in Save the Bay program. This program engages fourth grade students in environmental and marine science topics. They provide students with a hands-on approach to learning during class lessons. At the conclusion of the program, students experience a fun field trip to the Providence Bay, Save the Bay campus, and they also experience a great boat ride through Narragansett Bay. And the last initiative I want to talk about is Calming Corners. Ms. Murray was behind this initiative, so thank you. All Warwick schools receive funding through the Trauma Informed Support Services grant to buy furniture and materials for a space within a school building or classrooms. Along with the purchases, the Bradley Learning Exchange provided professional learning for more than 400 teachers. The training gave teachers and staff a better understanding of the connection between positive relationships and learning in the classroom. Some of the learning objectives include identify 3 brain breaks strategies to implement within the classroom, develop an understanding of the importance of sensory integration, explain how visual supports can create a safe and supportive classroom environment. Preschool and elementary teachers choose various flexible seating options, breathing tools, and other manipulatives to help students learn different strategies to manage their emotions while they're learning. And I encourage you to walk through the schools and see this flexible furniture and how it calms the kids down and how they really enjoy it. So thank you for your work, Kristen, on that. And that's all.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any questions or comments for Superintendent Danbro? Ms. Hazelwood.
Just a comment. At the beginning of the school year, I went and visited the schools with the staff and the admin, and I have to say, those calming corners were being used district-wide. So very good initiative. It's being used. The children are using them, and I would have enjoyed joining them in those calming corners. They were wonderful, so thank you so much.
All set, Ms. Hazelwood?
I'm all set.
Great. Any other comments from members of the committee? Seeing none. I guess I just have one. Are the members of administration getting a common corner? Is that in the plan?
We do need them.
Thank you, Superintendent. Next item on the agenda, discussion update, FY 2025 monthly financial report and year-end review. Mr. Bowl.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the school committee. I've provided everybody with the monthly fiscal report. A couple of things I just wanted to highlight while we're looking at this, and to highlight some of the things we discussed in the fiscal subcommittee meeting this past month. One of the items that we're really focused on right now is salary and compensation expense. Just to highlight some of the figures that we've looked at. In fiscal year 21 on this line, we were about 3.5% over budget. Fiscal year 22, we were about even, but that's due to ESSER funding. Fiscal year 23, we were 4.2% over budget. And in fiscal year 24, we were 5.5% over budget. So just putting it simply, the problem is starting to balloon in terms of how far over budget we are in salary and compensation. And just to put it into dollar figures, we spent about $5.7 million more than the budgeted amount in fiscal year 24 on salary and compensation. It's a priority for the superintendent and myself to address the issue and to either attempt to avoid or minimize a deficit in fiscal year 25. We've discussed some of this in the fiscal subcommittee meeting, and over the next month or so, we're going to come up with a couple of concrete measures we can take in order to get some of these expenses under control. But happy to answer any questions in the meantime.
Thank you, Mr. Bowl. Any comments or questions from members of the committee?
Yes,
Mr.
Chairman.
Testa.
Thank you, Mr. Bowl. So I would assume that on a go-forward basis, when it comes to budgeting and for fiscal 26,
Yep.
we're going to look at that line item differently.
Yeah.
And how we arrive at the number.
Yeah, I think when putting together the budget for fiscal year 25, there was somewhat of an assumption that fiscal year 24 was more accurate, and not realizing how far over budget exactly we were going to be. So that we've already taken some steps to correct in terms of the layoffs that were implemented. So that's going to help bring that number down for the current year. And we did increase the budget pretty significantly by $4.5 million for fiscal year 25 for that line. So that will help ease the problem, but it still will remain a problem in fiscal year 25.
Yeah, and I would also add, I mean, on the agenda today, and I think Ms. Townsend spoke to it, the additional TAs, we've always supported that.
Yep.
But we built a budget on X amount of layoffs, and I think we've given all those back and then some.
Yep.
So, you know, it's in March and April, you're here, right?
Yep.
So in October, now you're here. So I think, and it's really incumbent on the administration to come up with a better way to do that, because I think even longer term, with 2 new high schools built, I think we really need to look hard at increasing maintenance staff.
Yep.
Because we're going to have new buildings to maintain. We're going to have, so I think, you know, much longer term, we have to really wrestle with that and how we're going to do that. Because at the end of the day, this is people business.
Yep.
Right? Most of our budget is staff, right? And that's everywhere. You won't find a school department whose lion's share of the budget is not staff.
Yep.
So, you know, it's just a challenge, and you guys are going to come up with something, I'm sure. So,
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Testa. Any other comments from members of the committee?
I have a question.
Ms. Kirby-Chapman.
Just, I guess, out of curiosity, because when the money came in from the state aid, I had asked what I was going to go for, because I really wanted to do something with elementary.
Yep.
And you said that that's where the majority was going to go. Did that already include that money that you said that you were originally going to put aside for the state aid?
A portion of the state aid was allocated toward the salary line. It was less than $1 million from my memory. So that again helps ease the problem of fiscal year 25.
So we went over even more than that.
So fiscal year 24 we did. Fiscal year 25, I'm anticipating we're going to be significantly over budget again because of some of the issues that Mr. Testa brought up. We did implement layoffs, but we've also hired a number of folks too. And there's programmatic needs for people, so we can't just say no to every hire that comes through the district. I understand that. But from a budget perspective, it does add a little bit of stress. But to your point, yes, part of the state aid was allocated towards salaries, so that does help ease the problem to an extent.
To an extent.
So you said that,
Ms. Kirby-Chapman, you yield?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Ms. Hazelwood.
thank you. You said that you see us coming closer to balancing the budget and not being so much over budget in fiscal year 25? Can you give me a closer?
I think it's too early to give a prediction of that. Right now, we're really trying to refine a projection of salaries and compensation for the year, given the headcount additions and what we aren't going to realize in terms of layoffs. So that's part of the project over the next month, is to really refine that number and come up with where we think we're going to end fiscal year 25. And then we'll come up with more concrete steps to take in order to try to avoid a deficit. At that point, I think we can be a little more comfortable in saying we're either going to avoid a deficit altogether, or it'll be a smaller number than we were originally projecting if we put these steps in place.
And we cannot help what we need for the students.
Agreed,
The student
agreed.
need is priority. Whatever the need demands, we have to make sure we have the staff to do it by law. So, great job trying to get it balanced, but there are some things we have no control over.
Agreed, and that's been discussed with the administration,
Okay.
and with the superintendent. Student outcomes are priority, and so you can't nickel and dime a district into success, so those things are going to be considered.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Ms. Hazelwood. Any other comments or questions from members of the committee? The one or two comments I would make on this. First, all of our subcommittee meetings are now recorded and then posted on the Warwick Public Schools page. Mr. Bowl did a great presentation on how we're trending here in FY25. So I highly suggest, if you have the time, go and watch it. It's about a 7-minute presentation, but he talks about the strategy that he's developing so that way we can avoid a deficit. Second thing I would say is, I commend Mr. Bowl and the administration because although this is stressful and we are trending towards a deficit in FY25, it's been caught so early within our fiscal year that we can make adjustments. As been mentioned by many of my colleagues, and I'll echo it, we had those layoffs, which we believed would have saved us approximately $1.4 million, I believe. I could be a little bit off. But now we know we need these positions for the students, as some of the IEPs are dictating that. So we're bringing them back, and we actually, as the individuals during public comment had mentioned, we have more positions on tonight. So those costs are soon to be, those cost savings are soon to be negated, and then we're going to now be adding more costs on. So I just commend the administration for identifying it so early in the fiscal year and then being proactive in developing a strategy. I'm looking forward to seeing one of the action items in the fiscal subcommittee meeting is that Mr. Bowl will be presenting to the finance subcommittee in November the action plan, which the finance subcommittee would then vote to pass on to full committee for review and approval. So nicely done to you and the administration.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, discussion update, bond project status update. Mr. Gothberg.
Good evening, Chairman Galligan, committee members, superintendent. Quick update on our ongoing projects. At Oakland Beach, the windows are being installed second shift and weekends. Due to the late delivery by the manufacturer, we project window installation to be complete hopefully by Thanksgiving, depending on weather. Bookshelves and counter installation will start when windows are about 75% complete. This will allow the installation of these items to proceed without stopping and starting. The facade work had to be temporarily halted when we found that the backer masonry was in very, very poor condition in several locations. The structural engineer was brought in to review this issue and create a solution. This was done, and we are reviewing pricing from the contractor now. It just came in today. We will seek approval as soon as the review is complete and we verify the costs. Warwick Neck pavement was completed on October 3rd. Line striping should be done the end of next week. We did put it off a week, and that's weather permitting, of course. Loom has been spread, and hydro seeding and sod will be put down the end of this week. The elevator is being installed, approximately 10 days of that work remaining. There will be masonry work to follow that encases the elevator door frames, and then the final finishes in the surrounding areas will be done following that. And then work should be completed no later than the end of October, keeping my fingers crossed on that. Greenwood final punch list will be completed upon a receipt from the architect, which we expect by the end of this week. And meanwhile, we're hitting any obvious items, and final tweaking and adjustments of the new HVA system is ongoing. At John Green, exterior doors are being installed on weekends. Our low voltage contractor will make final Verkada connections as doors are being installed. Fire alarm work for that change order that was approved by the committee, I believe last month, is being completed on second shift. Electric latches have been received and are being installed, and the completion of the ADA door openers should be completed on second shift this week. The new storefront entrance should be installed by the end of October. We have the glass in hand, however, we are waiting for the frame materials to be delivered. At Holloman, work is well underway, and at this point, we are a minimum of 2 weeks ahead of schedule. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gothberg. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee? Say that again? Mr. Test.
Mr. Gothberg, did you mention Holloman?
Yes,
You did, okay, thank you.
we're 2 weeks ahead of schedule, minimum.
Any other comments, questions from members of the committee? See none. Thank you, Mr. Gothberg.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, discussion update, high school project update. Mr. Spiegel in left field.
Good evening, everyone. Chris Spiegel with Left Field. Nice to see everybody again. It's a pretty brief update for everyone tonight. The first is the environmental engineering, phase 1 environmental site assessment, as is required by the Department of Environmental Management and the RIDE School Building Authority, is wrapping up and will be reported out at our next meeting. As a reminder, this is a historical analysis of both the Tollgate and Pilgrim sites to check for its land uses prior to it becoming a school and whether or not any additional soil investigation is needed in order to determine if the presence of VOCs or petroleum-based chemicals that might have seeped into the soil. The project team continues to examine all value management options without the reduction of the scope of work. Project is moving forward through design development, and I'll give my caveat that I give at every meeting. Difficult conversations are coming. They should be expected, as we've been saying for months. RIDE has provided preliminary comments for our schematic design submission, all of which that we have already responded to. Nothing concerning or out of the ordinary for any of their comments. Like I said, we've already responded and submitted our responses back. Dr. De Silva was in Portugal for 3 weeks. He's just getting back now. Now that he's back, we assume that he'll be working through all of the submissions and approving them. We also have received a number of requests from different teacher stakeholder groups, science departments, English departments, and we are working on preparing a response as we further develop the details of the project in the design development phase. Top concerns at this point seem to be security, storage, and the teacher work/planning rooms. We want to set the expectations that the project cannot support every request, With that being said, in many cases, the requests are either already included within the design. An example would be natural light in all classrooms or new furniture in spaces. Others are still being developed, such as the number of electric vehicle charging stations on the project. And then some we most likely will not be able to accommodate per budget. So just want to be, just let people know that we've received them, we're working through them. As the design gets further developed, those will be updated. Again, it's a pretty short update tonight. I'm happy to take any questions as well. I know that Ms. Hazelwood probably has a question about the website, and we scheduled a meeting with the administration. The website is ready to go live. We just want the final blessing prior to putting it up. It does have separate tabs as requested, so it's one main homepage, and then you can click Tollgate or you can click Pilgrim to go either way.
You read my mind. You knew I wanted to make sure that the community could be in touch with what's going on, so thank you.
Of course.
Great. Any other comments or questions from members of the committee? Thank you, Mr. Spiegel.
Thank you.
Okay. Real quickly, just for the administration's benefit, the committee tonight will be doing something a little different with regards to any purchase-related agenda items. So you likely won't have to speak as they're presented unless a committee member has a particular question on one of the bids. The goal is that because of tonight's agenda being so small, that we can kind of beta test this out a little bit, refine the process, and then all purchase recs would be evaluated or scrutinized within the finance subcommittee and presented as a packet onto full committee moving forward, very similar to what the city council does. So we'll kind of work through it. We're trying it out tonight because it's a smaller agenda, so it works out a little bit easier. The past 6 months, we've had agendas with items between 40 to 50 items on it, so just a heads up on that. The first item is presented by Mr. Gothberg. It's Contract Award, Energy Conservation, Inc. This is a non-budgeted item. I'm looking for move approval on this. Motion to move approval. Made by Ms. Backus.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Testa. Given that this is a non-budgeted item, Mr. Gothberg, would you like to speak on this?
This was done through the RIMPA Contract 508 in conjunction with Rhode Island Energy through Energy Conservation, Inc. The total cost for these improvements is $219,530 with a $20,026 incentive in on-bill financing with zero interest for over 5 years. So with the $20,000 deducted, it's $199,504. Projected electrical and maintenance savings because of the LED lights is $21,703. Without the project savings, excuse me, the annual cost would be $39,980. The monthly on-bill financing would be $3,325.07. I have spoken with Mr. Bowl. We believe it's manageable, and this would be for new lights at the Warwick Vets Field, LED, remote controlled, state of the art.
Thank you, Mr. Gothberg. Are there any comments or questions from members of the committee? Mr. Testa.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Gothberg. So I think just for the public's edification, the reason we're pursuing this is because with the high school projects, once we start to build these schools, there'll be no fields.
Correct.
So we need to do something, right? Vets is going to be probably the workhorse facility for us. So this is new lighting, LED lighting, more efficient lighting, and essentially, Mr. Bowl, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you pay for it on your monthly bill, correct? And it's spread out over 5 years? Yeah. Right, okay.
And to Mr. Gothberg, I don't think Mr. Gothberg mentioned it, but the incentives that are part of this program, if we were to not take or begin this program now, would expire in December. So it's sort of basically add back $20,000 to the bill plus whatever somebody else would charge if we were to not take this offer.
Gotcha. And Mr. Gothard, this is something you've been working on for a while, right?
Mr. Oliver started this 2 years ago, and we were going to bring it one night last year, and it failed just because the price was higher and they had included other items on it, and it wasn't clear. This was very clear, and it's about $50,000 less than the previous iteration that we were looking at.
And the last question I have is there any concern that the current power supply in this facility not being able to handle?
It's a separate service, and
Okay.
we'd be using less power.
All right, just don't want any surprises.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this item? I just have two. The first is the project is strictly for the pack boxes, the light heads, distribution boxes, and that's it, correct? No poles associated with that?
We have very good foundation, very good poles. There'd be removal of the existing lights and structure, new structure and lights above, so.
Okay, and the second question I have, so as my colleague mentioned to my right, that this will help certainly support the sports that need a multi-purpose field and be able to allow us to have more games each day because we have the lighting. As far as the baseball field, have we continued to investigate lighting there and possible funding, and is there help from the city side of the budget?
We've talked with the city, and I am working diligently with everybody involved to get a number to see what the cost would be to light both baseball and softball fields.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Mr. Bold, this is the annual cost here going into this fiscal year. Would that be $18,000 for fiscal year 25, or are we cutting that in half, going with $9,000, given that, give or take, given that construction would start after the fall?
So it would be whenever the lights were up and running from that month forward. It would be $3,300 a month.
Okay. So it's from the commission date.
It's about $40,000 a year.
Yep. So $40,000 a year, but prorated in the first year.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Hazelwood.
Still going to need poles, correct?
I'm sorry, I could not hear you.
The poles we're going to need new poles for the lights?
No,
For the ball fields, or?
The poles at the football field are fine. They
Okay,
have very good foundations, they're in good shape, they're going to be reused.
okay. The fields, how much are we looking at to spend on the ball fields? Do we have an amount?
No, I'm waiting to have a discussion with Grid and potential installers and suppliers to see how much it would be. I can't project.
Did the
You're
city?
You're talking about the softball and baseball fields?
Yes,
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that yet.
okay. We did have some funding coming from the city, is that correct? The city council gave it to us through Parks and Rec, is that
Right,
my understanding?
We spent $264,000 on the new track, and there's money left, and there has been some discussion with the mayor that we can use that for either potentially the tennis courts or the lighting.
And that was 500,000, is that correct?
That's what we started with, but we spent 264.
So there's still about 300.
236,000.
So we're waiting on that, correct?
Correct, but that would not be near enough for the lights.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gothberg.
Thank you, Ms. Hazelwood. Okay. Any other comments or questions from members of the committee? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda, bond funded, discussion action bid award 25-003 low voltage contractors. Looking for a motion to move approval.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Oh, God. Looking for a motion to move approval.
So-
All right, Ms. Backus, seconded by?
Second.
All right, Ms. Hazelwood and Mr. Testa. Mr. Gothberg, if you want to take this one, since it's a bond-funded item.
Since we are doing a lot of building envelope projects, part of what we have to do is reconnect to the existing Verkada system on the new door hardware. Our staff is not capable of doing that. And to save some money anyway, we went out to bid for a contractor to make those connections and put cameras back as we take windows down because when the window cameras were put up, some of them gone through the windows. So we put it out to bid, and we had one single bidder, and that was Cynet. So we are doing it on a time and materials basis. They've given us the hourly rate for both technician and apprentice, and how much for cable to run 300 feet of cable plus overhead and profit. So we have defined terms, and we just track hours, and it's fairly simple.
Thank you, Mr. Gothberg.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next item on the table here is a discussion action, new high schools project labor agreement recommendation. Just to be clear, because the memo may have been misunderstood, the motion that I'd be looking for approval on right now would be to acknowledge the receipt of the study on the purchase labor agreement, and that we are acknowledging the recommendations made within the report. I have another comment to make after we make that motion. Yes.
I'll move approval.
Motion made by Mr. Testa,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Hazelwood and Ms. Backus. I'll turn it over to you in 1 second, Mr. Gothberg. Just for my colleague's knowledge here, I did speak with Mr. Gothberg the other day. This vote right now is simply on the fact that we're saying, yes, we've got a copy of the report, thank you, and we read it, we understood it, and we know what your recommendation is. This is neither an approval or a decline for the building committee to proceed with creating a draft PLA, but rather authorizing the building committee to further deliberate whether or not a PLA should be crafted, and then understand the cost implications of a PLA on the project from a labor perspective. So that is simply what we're voting on tonight. That is the sole motion. It's that we are acknowledging receipt of the report and that we understand what the recommendation is in there. It's not us proceeding with an actual PLA at this time. So just wanted to make that clear. It's more of a formality, a procedural. So, Mr. Gothberg, do you have any comments you want to make?
Just to further comment on your comments, is that if you are considering a PLA, there is legislation that if you're considering a PLA, then you have to do the study. So that's why the study's done. We've checked off that box, and you said it all.
Thank you, Mr. Gothberg. Any other comments or questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, all those in... You got something? No, you're good. Seeing none, all those in favor? Ms. Kirby-Chapman.
I guess, what was the incentive behind this? What was the thought process?
I'm sorry, what?
What was the incentive behind this? What was the thought process about trying to make this complete union?
If the district is considering a project labor agreement with the unions, then you have to do a PLA, project labor agreement study. So we have done the study. The study is the recommendation that is before you. So we're looking for you to accept the study and accept the, to accept the recommendation to go ahead and further think about negotiating with the unions.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from members of the committee? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 8, I'm going to make a motion that we table the discussion action bidding and procurement investigation update review.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa.
Second.
Seconded by, who seconded? Ms. Backus. Any discussion on tabling? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes 5-0. Next items, these are all budgeted items presented by Mr. Ricks and the athletic department. I'm going to put before my colleagues here as discussed and make it one packet. Items number 9, 10, 11, and 12. Again, these are all FY25 budgeted items as presented by Mr. Ricks. So I'm looking for a motion to move approval on items 9 through 12.
Move approval.
Made by Ms. Backus.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Hazelwood. Any discussion on any of those in the packet? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0 on items 9 through 12. How's that work for you, Ms. Tedeschi? Good? All right, let's rock and roll then. Next items up here are presented by Mr. Kane. They're items 13, 14, 15, and 16. These are all Perkins-funded items, as again discussed, putting them all together because they're Perkins-funded, and there's no implication to our FY25 budget. I'm looking for a motion to move approval items 13, 14, 15, and 16.
Move approval.
Made by Ms. Backus.
Second?
Seconded by Ms. Hazelwood. Any discussion on any of those?
Mr. Chair, I just have
Yes, Mr. Testa.
a question or two for Mr. McCaffrey on these, or Mr. Kane, either or. On number number 15, emergency training, and on number, bear with me, there were two for the EMT trainings, right? There was one for the Lifesavers Program, Metropolitan Regional CTC, no, I'm sorry, Emergency Training RI LLC, and there was another one.
21, I believe.
21, Rhode Island Community Training Center. Just to be clear, this is training for the students to be able to take the EMT exam. One for the Lifesaver Program, one for the Health Occupations Program.
Correct.
Right? And so the point I want to make is that we have two programs that allow students to do that, right? And it's complementary. It's not critical. It's just
Correct.
complementary. So there is the difference in the cost, but Mr. McCaffrey explained the actual programs are a little bit different. So I just want to say I'm proud of what we can offer. When Mr. McCaffrey and I sat down, about 4 or 5 years ago now, about adding that EMT component to the Health Occupations Program, at the time Lifesavers was, I think, beginning on the pathway to be a pathway. So, you know, it's good. It allows students to be prepared to take the EMT exam and just sets them up for a good career. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Testa. Any other questions or comments on agenda items 13, 14, 15, and 16 as presented by Mr. Kane and Perkins funded? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Items 13 through 16 pass 5-0. The next item, Mr. Kane, if you do want to speak to, because this is a change order, it's I'm looking for a motion to move approval on discussion action change order request Coventry Lumber PO 2500318.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa. Seconded by Ms. Hazelwood. Mr. Kane, if you'd like to explain the change order.
Sure, we're looking to add $6,000 to existing PO in order to purchase additional consumable supplies for the construction projects. It's all being paid from categorical grant funding from last year that's left over.
Right, thank you. Any questions or comments from members of the committee? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Kane.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, discussion action, contract award, Barton Gilman 20417, as presented by Ms. Danbrook. I'm looking for a motion to move approval.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa.
Second?
Seconded by Ms. Hazelwood. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Okay. I'm now going to do a packet of items 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. 19 through 24, all FY25 budgeted items as presented by Mr. McCaffrey. I'm looking for a motion to move approval on items 19 through 24.
So moved.
Made by Ms. Backus.
Second?
Seconded by Mr. Testa and Ms. Hazelwood. Any questions or comments from members of the committee on any of the items within that packet?
Yep. Mr. Chair, I
Mr.
do.
Testa.
Thank you. It's on number 22, Beyond Services. So this is the transportation. I just want to make sure I'm understanding what it is. It looks like there's a total dollar amount, but there's 2 recs, right? So that's
Yes, there are.
that was intentional. Okay, because the accompanying sheets just say the same thing. So I just didn't know if that was supposed to be that way. I know the 2 recs total, the total dollar amount, which is fine. So I was just wondering why there were 2 recs for that and just not one. It's procedural.
The vendor can provide the same services statewide, but at a less expensive price. So it's cheaper for the district to use this vendor for the McKinney-Vento students.
Okay, all right, thank you. You've answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you yield, Mr. Testa?
Yes, I do.
Good. Okay. Any other comments or questions from members of the committee on agenda items 19 through 24 as presented by Mr. McCaffrey? Seeing none, all those in favor of items 19 through 24, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes 5-0 on items 19 through 24. Next, we have item 25, discussion action, contract award, USI Consulting Group, as presented by Ms. Ruggieri. Looking for a motion to move approval on agenda item 25.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa.
Second?
Seconded by Ms. Hazelwood. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee for Ms. Ruggieri?
Nope.
Seeing none, looking for those who are in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Ruggieri. Next item we have is item 26, discussion action, contract award, automatic heating equipment 20556, as presented by Mr. Oliver. I'm looking for a motion to move approval on agenda item number 26.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa.
Second?
Seconded by Ms. Hazelwood. Any questions or comments for Mr. Oliver on PO 20556? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. We're going to split up Mr. Bowl here for a second. I'm looking for a motion to move approval on agenda items 27 and 28 as presented by Mr. Bowl. These are discussion actions on Ken's Printing Co. and Rock's Food Service. Looking for a motion to move approval.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa.
Second?
Seconded by Ms. Hazelwood. Any questions or comments for Mr. Bowl?
I do, Mr. Chair.
Testa.
Mr. Bowl, on number 27, Ken's Printing, I think the amount was $8,100 or $8,900?
That's correct.
Yeah, so, and it's not a question on the purchase, it's not. But when I saw this, it came back to me that this, I know this is in the WTU contract, but this is 2024. So, you know, I don't know why we have to print contracts. I don't know, we just can't communicate them electronically. So, I mean, it's for the next contract, whoever sits at the table, if maybe that's something we can look to. It's not 1984, it's like 2024. So electronic copies, I mean, everything's electronic, even though your communications to us are all electronic. So that's all. Again, it's in the grand scheme of things, $8,000 in this budget is nothing, but it's just, to me, it seems like an antiquated concept. So, okay, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Testa. Any other comments from members of the committee? Again, we're voting on items 27 and 28 as presented by Mr. Bowl. Seeing no other comments, looking for those in favor.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes 5-0. This is why we've split up your votes here, because now you're going to have to explain the situation. I'm looking for a motion to move approval on action item 29, discussion action, bid award 25-0008, hot food serving counters and steam tables.
So moved.
Made by
Second.
Mr. Testa, seconded by Ms. Hazelwood. Mr. Bowl?
So the district receives food service grant funds through the National Equipment Assistance Grant. And through those funds, we're able to purchase food service equipment for the district. So we were looking to buy serving counters and steam tables for the schools that are listed on the bid award, which was Greenwood, Hoxie, Norwood, Lippett, Oakland Beach, and Welk. We received bids from 5 different vendors. And after receiving the bids and reviewing everything, we decided to seek your approval for awarding the bid to Johnson, Lancaster and Associates. The total request is for...
Mr. Bowl, we're on item 29. This is the hot food serving counters and steam tables.
That's it.
That's
Yeah.
item
Yeah.
30 would be Johnson, Lancaster.
So this is 29 is the bid award.
Okay,
So we're
perfect.
requesting
Thank
you to approve the bid, and then 30 is to actually make the purchase
Okay.
using that bid.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt. Anything
Oh,
else?
no problem.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from members of the committee? Ms. Bax?
Just one question about deliver, set in place, and inbound freight. Looks like it's $150 for all three, deliver and set in place, and $18 for inbound freight. Is added at the bottom?
I'm just reviewing now. That looks, yeah, that's correct. You're correct.
Just seems odd.
Yeah, I'm not sure where they come up with those fees. I would say that part of the reasoning for the awarding of the bid to Johnson is because they were also willing to remove the old equipment, which is huge. So that's almost a cost that we're not incurring now.
Good to know. Thank you.
All set, Ms. Backus?
Yes. Thank
Great. Mr. Testa?
Mr. Chair, thank you. I would just say, that in that industry, that's pretty standard for a delivery and set in place fee. That's very standard in that industry, so it's not unreasonable and it's not unusual.
All set, Mr. Testa. Any other comments or questions from members of the committee? Okay, again, we're voting on action item 29, bid award 25-0008, hot food serving counters and steam tables. All those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Seeing none, motion passes 5-0. We now, with the explanation that was prior to this one, item 30, discussion action, looking for move approval on contract award Johnson, Lancaster and Associates, POs 2517 and 2518.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Hazelwood. Any comments or questions on these two? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next, we're going to put together a packet here. Agenda items 31, 32, 33, discussion action, contracts, awards, as presented by Mr. Heatherton. These are all Title I grant-funded expenditures. Again, it's items 31 through 33, looking for a motion to move approval on those items.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Hazelwood. Any comments or questions on those three items? Seeing none,
Yes.
all those in, up, Ms. Backus.
I had a question on number 32. Just right reader. The cost for shipping is outrageous, I think. We're spending a lot of money for them. And I think the shipping cost is over $800. Which is a concern.
So those items include classroom libraries, so there's lots of decodable books. So it's a lot of actual materials being sent to the school.
I get it, but shipping costs of $809 is a lot of money, and I think it's just ridiculous. You know, there's no discount or nothing. And they may be sole source, but they have us over a barrel, I guess.
That's the rate that we've received.
Does anybody else have a problem with this?
No, I just want to say.
Are you, one
I'm
second.
sorry.
Are you all set? Do you yield?
I want to know if anybody else has a problem with this. It's significant money.
Okay, I didn't know. Are you asking a specific person or rhetorical?
I'm asking if anybody in this room has a problem with this beside me.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yeah.
So, Mr. Heather, are these actual texts?
Correct.
They're actually books, right?
Yep.
And they're shipping from Texas, I think? From Dallas? Or, no, Minnesota? No, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. I'm looking at the Math Recovery Council. So this was
Dallas.
Dallas, right? Yeah, so, and how many techs in total?
They're classroom sets, so for grades kindergarten through second grade, there are 3 kindergartens at Oakland Beach, and there are 2 first and 2 second.
Yeah, so Ms. Baxter, I hear you on the freight. What I'm pretty sure of is there's a lot of weight involved in this, and it's an LTL shipment from more than halfway across the country. LTL rates have been through the roof for the last 4 years. So it's probably couple of pallets maybe, and that's just expensive stuff to ship. I mean, I only say that because that's the industry that I spend a lot of time in. So I know 800 is a lot of, at least on the service, it's a lot of money. I don't think it's that much considering what it is you're shipping, and the conditions under which you're shipping it. So, but discounts, that's another question.
Do you yield, Mr. Testa? Great. Any other comments or questions from members of the committee? Ms. Kirby-Chapman, do you have something?
Well, just to kind of follow up, that's all part of the grant funding, right? We're not paying for the 800, or is that the only way we have to
Yeah,
pay for
this
it?
is all through our federal Title I program, so this is
Yeah,
been
so it's-
approved by RIDE. It's in our consolidated resource plan as well.
So it's included. Okay.
Do you yield, Ms. Kirby-Chapman? Great. Any other comments or questions from members of the committee? So at this time, again, we're voting on items 31, 32, 33 as presented by Mr. Heatherton, all Title I grant-funded items. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Did you get that, Ms. Tedeschi? Fantastic. Okay. So we're going to not take all of Ms. Barber and Mr. Allenbach's items. We're going to split them up here. The first one, I'd be looking for a motion to move approval, discussion action, approval of 5 full-time teacher assistant requests.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Testa.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Hazelwood. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee? Could you just shout out the schools that would be the benefactors of these positions?
Hello, yes. The first is Holloman. We have a one-on-one going to Oakland Beach, and then we have Oakland Beach IASE, Park IASE, and Cedar Hill IASE classrooms.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from members of the committee? Ms. Backus.
Just for the public, would you please explain the difference between a teaching assistant, a one-to-one teaching assistant, and a full-time program assistant?
Sure.
Thank you.
The one-on-one teacher assistants, they are in the students' IEPs, so they require that special support that is focused just on them. And the program assistants are there to help all students in the class.
But they are all teacher assistants, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you yield, Ms. Backus?
Yes.
Perfect. Any other comments or questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, at this time I'd be looking for those in favor of action item number 34. Aye. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries 5-0. All right, now I'll be looking for the committee to take as a packet action items 35, 36, 37, and 38 as presented by Ms. Barber and Mr. Allenbach, all budget, 35, 36, and 37 as presented by Ms. Barber and Mr. Allenbach, all FY25 budgeted.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Hazelwood. Any comments or questions? Ms. Hazelwood?
Mrs. Ruggieri, is this the same dentist that reached out to me back in February?
It may be, I'm not sure.
Okay, because I think the name is familiar.
I have a
Do you yield, Ms. Hazelwood?
Yes.
Perfect. Mr. Testa.
I have a question, thank you. And I guess to Ms. Bauer and Mr. Allenbach. A month or 2 months ago, he was on our agenda, we approved something. So did we approve him as the dentist and now we're approving the expenditure?
That's correct.
Okay, that's what, because this is a different dentist than we have historically had. He's new, but when I saw the name, I realized that we had done something for. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Ms. Backus?
On Learn Well, which is number 35, that's for Butler, educating students at Butler, or Bradley Hospital, excuse me. How many students do we currently have there?
We don't have that right in front of us, but it does change. It's general ed and special education students, so anyone that is admitted to Bradley, it changes, and sometimes they're there for 5 to 10 days.
So how many do we have right now?
That I don't have in front of us. I'm sorry.
All righty. I yield.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, all those in favor of action items 35 through 37 as presented by Ms. Barber and Mr. Allenbach?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And last but not least, action item 38, discussion action, contract award, Cengage Learning, Inc., 20633, as presented by Dr. Schultz. This is a budgeted item, looking for a motion to move approval.
So moved.
Ms. Hazelwood, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Testa. Ms. Backus, any comments or questions for Dr. Schultz? Ms. Backus.
Yes. Now, this company is charging us 10% shipping. I'm not sure where it's coming from, but 10% shipping, but they're giving us 2 wraparound teachers editions. I think I'd rather have free shipping than their wraparound teachers editions, because the wraparound teachers editions are only $300. Shipping always gets me.
I can certainly reach out to them and ask them to give us more of a discount, because I love doing that. I'll do that tomorrow.
That's awesome.
All right.
Top of the muffin to you.
Top of the muffin.
Okay. Council has advised us to still pass it, even though Dr. Schultz is going to go shake them down. Ms. Backus, do you yield?
I yield. It's a great thing, you know.
I'm sicker. She's got the energy. Go ahead. Any other comments or questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, all those in favor of action item 38? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. We're now on to public comment. Second public comment portion of the meeting. Individual comments will be respectfully limited to 3 minutes per person, with public comment not to exceed 45 minutes. Though the content of comments will not be restricted, it is the hope of this committee that citizens, committee members, and the administration alike will be respectful of each other's right to speak, tolerant of different points of view, and mindful of everyone's time. This public comment period is for general comments or concerns. Speakers are asked to state their name for the record. Again, if this is your first time attending one of our meetings, just come on down after one speaker is done and feel free to speak. Yes.
Hello, Darlene Netco. Again, as long as you're looking at staffing and adding positions, I think you need to look at our middle schools. I am seeing some very high class size numbers, over the contractual maximum of 26 in a number of cases. And I know over the last few years there have been teams cut from each of the middle schools, and it might be time to put those back, as well as put the business teacher back here at VETS so that we can have a business program. And then I have to disagree with Mr. Testa about putting the contract solely online. We don't, even though online is an option, that is not the optimal way for people to read and understand and have easy access to text. It's, I think the contract is now 63 or 64 pages long in a very small font size. And having a physical copy of it is much easier to find information in and to use that information whenever one must use that information. Some of us use it quite frequently. And some of us also have to have a hard copy to give an arbitrator when the case goes to arbitration. So there, we ordered, I think 1,400 copies, 880 immediately went to WTU members, or 886, whatever we have now. And then every administrator is supposed to receive a hard copy of it to have, so that they have reference to it. And then every new hire in the next 3 years will receive a hard copy of it. And of course, the arbitrators. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public wishing to comment? Any other members of the public wishing to comment? Jacob, you sure? Okay. All right. Future meetings. The Health and Wellness Subcommittee meeting will be on Tuesday, October 29th at 3 p.m. The next Policy Subcommittee meeting is Tuesday, October 29th at 4:30 p.m. The next Warwick School Building Committee meeting will be on Wednesday, November 6th at 7:30 a.m. The next Fiscal Subcommittee meeting will be Wednesday, November 6th at 3 p.m. And our next regularly scheduled monthly school committee meeting will be Tuesday, November 12th at 7 p.m. Given that there is no other matters of business before this committee, I'd be looking for a motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
Made by Ms. Backus. Is there a second?
Second?
Seconded by Ms. Hazelwood. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Motion passed by 0.